The myth of the world's second strongest army was shattered by the courage of Ukraine's military. The master of the Kremlin towers spent days and nights in heavy contemplation. What should he do next? Obsessive thoughts crept into his mind about the unenviable fate of tyrants who lost their wars. Images of Hussein, Gaddafi, and other failed leaders sent a chill of horror down his spine, gradually turning into a paralyzing terror. Thoughts about the outdated military equipment used by the so-called second strongest army in the world, so named because it closely resembles the Soviet army of World War II, offered little hope for a victorious outcome to the special operation. Before the Eurasian Judika's eyes appeared the image of Hitler's death from the Soviet film epic Liberation. Eureka! The beloved leader of all the Siberian cranes might have shouted, if he knew that word. He immediately wanted to summon Shoigu and Gerasimov and sternly ask, "Where the hell are the munitions?" Then share his brilliant idea. But then a thought burned him. He couldn't, after all. They hadn't completed their 2-week quarantine. And as for the shells, there was simply no one left to ask about them anymore. And since there's time to really refine and meticulously polish the idea, it's certainly well worth going through the whole chain of associations again and carefully recalling the details of the exceptionally brilliant plan. So, in the beginning, there was Hitler, or more precisely, his death. A rightful sense of pride swept over the grandson of those who fought in the war. After that came the vivid image of the immortal regiment and the gymnast, Alinichka, with a huge banner reading, "We can do it again." Of course, one must tirelessly repeat the actions of the beloved leaders of the proletariat in Nazi Germany. There it is, the solution. The Führer realized that the Third Reich was no match for the military and economic potential of the enemy, and he came to the conclusion that technological superiority was necessary. The fruit of the Reich's technological breakthrough was supposed to be the creation of a miracle weapon, or as the Aryans called it, Wunderwaffe. At this point, the Kremlin leader felt a mix of emotions: pride in his knowledge of German, and a slight disappointment that, with age, he could no longer hold a meeting with subordinates in his native language without a prepared script. But how Merkel used to deeply admire and appreciate his pronunciation, how she would enthusiastically raise both of her hands and proudly present her Ausweis. All right, enough with the sentimentality. Now is not the time to relax. It's necessary to really think through the miracle weapon of technological breakthrough for Great Russia. The outstanding geopolitical strategist summoned his aides and, as always, laid out his brilliant idea in a brief, commanding manner. "The decision is made. Carry it out," mumbled the Kremlin grandpa, drifting off into a sweet doze. The new assignment left the presidential entourage in a stupor. What kind of technological superiority can you talk about in a country where even setting up nail production is a problem? The comrades scratched their heads gloomily until after the second crate of Boyarishnik, inspiration finally struck one of them. We need to fight the enemy with his own weapon, that is, respond to the president with his own quote. The whole group started tapping away on their gadgets in unison. "Found it!" shouted the methodology adept, proud to be a student of Shchedrovitsky himself. And he jabbed his finger at a video where Putin called nuclear weapons and orthodoxy the two pillars of Russian society, guaranteeing the country's external security and moral health. What nonsense is this? His colleagues exhaled in collected disappointment. Patiently, as if speaking to clueless children, the idea generator began to explain. A lack of material resources, ideas, technologies, and people capable of implementing them prevents the use of new, advanced military technologies. There's nothing to dig for here. The threat of using nuclear weapons is being exploited to the fullest extent. From time to time, the Kremlin reminds all its opponents about it. That leaves Orthodoxy. Its potential is far from fully realized. The speaker suggested basing the strategy on the idea behind the main cathedral of the armed forces of the Russian Federation, specifically the method of harnessing the power of relics. To create the main icon of the Church of the Savior Not Made by Hands, they made an unusual wooden base from the gun carriage of a cannon from 1710, which was found in the 1970s in the Neva River, across from Peter the Great's cabin. Rather than utilizing the usual cross dowels that securely fasten the vertical boards together, They opted to use stocks from Tokarev automatic rifles from the Great Patriotic War period of history. On the buttstock of one of them, the manufacturer's details are clearly visible. The acceptance stamp of the Izhevsk mechanical plant from 1944. Giving in to a surge of inspiring eloquence, the speaker reminded those present about the frescoes in the Armed Forces Church. On the mosaic panel, they depicted Putin, Shoigu, Gerasimov, the Goblin Aksionov, Stalin, and the main slogan of the era, "Crimea is ours." However, due to the spitefulness of Russia's enemies, the images of the elite were removed. The sacred slogan, "Crimea is ours," was replaced with a faceless inscription, "We are together." Sure, we're together, but in what way? The image of the leader of all times and peoples, Generalissimo Stalin, was covered with the slogan, "We will raise the banner of victory over Berlin." Idiots, damn it. Who are we going to sell gas to if we take Berlin? Lavrov exclaimed indignantly. They removed the fresco with the greatest leader, but forgot the axiom. If there is Putin, there is Russia. If there is no Putin, there is no Russia. The gathering buzzed with indignation. The speaker realized he had just said something stupid. If there is no Putin in the main temple of Russia's military, then no, you can't even think about that. But after all, in Putin's place, they put up an icon. A sacred place is never left empty. This is a sign heralding the need for a wonder weapon. Suddenly, the curator of the Eurasian Geopolitics Department burst into speech. He had read a few books as a child, which is why he got the agent nickname the Philosopher. What followed was a long and convoluted explanation that the theoretical foundation of Russia's wonder weapon is Daniel Andreev's teaching about egregores, as described in The Rose of the World. The practical application of the doctrine allowed a quick-witted student of Avessalom Podvodny to make a dizzying career leap, from a fellow philosopher in the Eurasian Anti-Orange Front to an unpaid advisor to the head of household affairs for the president of Ukraine. The idea generator caught himself and asked Dugin to stop with the philosophical rambling, since everyone was starting to fall asleep. Regaining the initiative, the speaker reminded the audience of the impression made on Russian society by the icon depicting Stalin surrounded by the marshals of victory. The gathering buzzed approvingly, recalling how in the Belgorod region, Hieromonk Afinogen held a litany with this icon. All the facts presented are genuine. I will personally prepare a report for the president, declared Diamond, still not fully conscious and nursing a hangover. Transcendental, blurted out Shoigu and Gerasimov, but after exchanging glances and seeing the look on each other's faces, they realized neither of them knew what the word meant. Instead, Gerasimov mumbled something about the great victory, while Shoigu hurried to wrap up the meeting by issuing an order to develop a concrete action plan for implementing the high-tech miracle weapon. Soon after, as a letter to a lucky soldier, the fortunate ones in the Russian army received a box of humanitarian aid from the United Russia Party as a gift. Along with the grains and canned meat, the box contained a bottle of holy water and an icon of Putin with the inscription, Almighty. Guided by the motto, everything for the front, everything for victory, the Tretyakov Gallery handed over the world-famous icon by Andrei Rublev, the Trinity, to the Trinity Cathedral of the Trinity Lavra of St. Sergius for an event celebrating the 600th anniversary of the discovery of the relics of St. Sergius of Rodonej, with the participation of many pilgrims and Patriarch Kirill. After some time, the strategist who outplayed everyone decided to personally place the miracle weapon into the hands of the Russian military. The president visited the headquarters of the Dnieper troop grouping in the Kherson region and Vostok in the Luhansk region to personally present the icons to the valorous troops. Lost in sweet memories of the past in his dacha in Gelendzhik, he absent-mindedly listened to the reports from Colonel General Oleg Makarevich, commander of the group, and Colonel General Mikhail Teplinsky, commander of the Russian airborne forces. It seemed like everything was going according to the special operation plan. But 2 weeks after the large-scale invasion of Ukraine, the icon of the Mother of God, softener of evil hearts, began to stream myrrh in the main cathedral of the armed forces of the Russian Federation. In footage captured by parishioners, you can see red-colored myrrh, resembling blood, running down the icon. No one in the Kremlin towers realized that the attack on Ukraine had been condemned by higher powers. In their chauvinistic frenzy, not a single Russian authority remembered that icons only helped Nicholas II to lose the war, destroy the empire, and doom the dynasty. The ruling clique within the Kremlin still hasn't figured out that in the war Russia has now violently unleashed against Ukraine, it is only the eventual remains of Putin and his inner circle that will help the soldiers of the Russian army return home, not packed in sealed black plastic body bags.